don't know what he's up to. He's picking me like chicken, shucking me like corn, stewing me like an oyster. I mean, he ain't...
The lone gunman in the shadows, whispers of truth or deception, lost in the web of conspiracy, in Dallas where secrets lie hidden. A shot echoes through Dealey Plaza. The lone gunman's tale unfolds between Oswald and the classy knoll. The truth, the mystery untold. On airwaves, the story never dulls. Jack Ruby's name in whispers, a man with secrets to deliver. As shadows dance in the moonlight, the lone gunman unravels the fight. Truth buried in history's tomb. The lone gunman's tale unfolds between Oswald and the classy knoll. The truth, the mystery untold. On airwaves, the story never dulls. Between Oswald and the classy knoll. The truth, the mystery untold. On airwaves, the story never dulls. The story never dulls. On airwaves, the story never dulls. Jack Ruby's name in whispers, a man with secrets to deliver. As shadows dance in the moonlight, the lone gunman unravels the fight. Truth buried in history's tomb. The lone gunman's tale unfolds between Oswald and the classy knoll. The truth, the mystery untold. On airwaves, the story never dulls.
What is up? What is up? Welcome to the show. This is episode number 320 of the Lone Gunman podcast. This is part 2 of Operational in Dealey Plaza, where we're going to be taking you through some of the people who we think were on the ground at the time of the assassination and why we think that. Because that's an important part of the whole story, why we think that. Sure, we can just sit here and say who we think it was, but I think it's important to have some very sound and logical reasons for that. Because, like I said before, lots of people have claimed to be in Dealey Plaza with a gun and shooting at the president. It's the people that don't say they were there that you got to worry about. And last week we got into Lawrence Howard and Felipe Vidal Santiago a little bit. This week we are going to get into Loran Hall and Roy Hargraves a little bit. Unmute yourself, Joe. There you go.
Yes, sir. I was waiting for you to finish, but I did have myself muted in the beginning, so thank you. And here we go. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Yeah, I saw that. I covered for you. It's all good.
You're a good guy.
I didn't want to have a cold open on the show like we did last week when you left your mic open during the intro and you and Ruby were having playtime or whatever was going on over there. Fur was flying everywhere.
Yeah. Whatever happened there?
Yeah. So let's welcome some folks in, shall we, Joe? Who's here to play with us this evening? Let's see.
Let us see.
Well, I know Trey's here. Trey is here. What's up, Trey? Claude is in the house. Tiny Dancer. Big Mike, Alpha 66. South to West is in the house. Jack. What's up, Jack? James is in the house. James Smith. And let's see who else we got here. Paul Cummings. What's up, Paul? And we got Paul Vines. Two Pauls in the house. Howdy, howdy, howdy. See No Evil is in the house. Roger Lee Henry Oswald is in the house. Our music man. What's up? What's up?
Roger.
Hey, Roger, hit me up because we got a problem with the intro. So holler at me, bro. I might need you to resend me the intro. I've been having to use this AI shit the past couple of times. I don't like it. Scott. Hello, Scott is in the house. Greg. What is up, Greg? That's my buddy from Dallas. Let's see. Garden and Guns is in the house.
Hi, GNG.
And Deco. What's up? Paula is in, reporting in. Better late than never, Paula. We won't hold it against you, I promise.
Paula.
So we definitely got a full house. And I will say also welcome to our new members. We have a couple, Joe.
Yeah.
We do. Let me see. Let me pull these up here so I don't murder their names. Let's see here. Scott joined 2 days ago. Jeff at Silk City, and Mark just joined today. I had to help him a little bit.
Okay.
Figure out where to find the join button.
And is that better found on a laptop compared to an iPhone? Is that how you helped him?
Yeah, he wasn't seeing it on his phone. So I told him to try a laptop, and apparently that worked.
Yeah.
So
that is the best practices for becoming a member would be
now it works on my phone, on my YouTube app now. I can see join, but apparently there's a whole bunch of different factors. It depends on what kind of phone you got, whether or not the app needs updating or it's an old version of the app or whatever the case may be. But we figured it out. So welcome in, Mark. And if you missed our members only exclusive show, I will say, Joe, that we had a bit of a banger Wednesday night.
We always do.
Yeah.
Well, as of recent.
Yes. Yeah, we got into a little bit of leftover tidbits from Lawrence Howard that I couldn't get into the last show. And we also talked about the United Healthcare CEO assassination a little bit, which we're not going to cover very much on here on this version. We can be a little bit more open on the members only show. Mm-hmm. But I will throw this up here, Joe, because I am the ever-loving conspiracy theorist of the group. And I always love, my motto is don't trust anybody and question everything. Okay? So when I see something like this that's fed to us by the mainstream media, I got a problem. So let me pop this up here real quick, Joe.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, they tell you that these are images of the shooter, okay?
Yep.
Now, one of the first things that totally jumps out at me is the different color backpacks. Now, in the video of the actual shooting, the backpack is clearly silvery gray, which matches to the image we see on the left, right?
Yep.
But on the image on the right, that's clearly a black backpack. And I mean, clearly. That's not a lighting issue. That is a black backpack, bro.
Yep.
Not to mention that the jacket itself, if you look at the one on the right, it has two front flap pockets. that I just don't see in the image on the left. Now, could that be some kind of video degradation? I don't know. But to me, these look like two different people. And of course, this could be the conspiracy theorist in me coming out again, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
But how many professional assassins do you know that wear $400 hoodies, $1,000 Hermes calfskin sneakers, and $300 Peak Design everyday 30-liter backpacks?
Wait, go back to the sneakers. Hermes calfskin sneaker.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and the suppressor obviously is
Yeah, it's either part of the gun that we talked about the other night,
yep.
or it is a legit,
Mhm.
suppressor. Either way, that combination
Mhm.
or the other gun, you're looking at $2,000-$3,000 pieces. And oh, by the way, they still haven't caught the guy.
Yeah. And do you know what was so the 3 spent shell casings allegedly had something written on them? Did you
Yeah,
hear
but
about this?
I thought it was written on the bullets. Because remember they didn't find shell casings because he allegedly caught them coming out of the gun.
That's what we thought, but I think there was 3 found. I thought I bookmarked this on Twitter. I might not have, but it was the 3 deny, depose, one other D or something, and it had to do with a book that was written against the insurance companies, right? Uh, of how they don't acknowledge their claims. So it's like, and there's official reporting on what was written on these shell casings. Is that him leaving a message, or is that him doing a complete misdirection and trying to, throw off anyone that might try to investigate?
Yeah,
I don't know.
deny, delay, depose. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, our chat comes through once again. Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, Tiny, that it's not supposed to be the same place. Apparently, these are 2 different screenshots from 2 different surveillance cameras. One was at Starbucks, and I'm not sure what the other one was from.
I believe it was from his hostel, and
Allegedly.
allegedly, and the lady at the hostel had got him to put his mask down, and I mean, and honestly, man, it might not be a man, pun intended. It could be a woman. I mean, one of those pictures looks like it could be a woman. I'm not saying it is.
Yeah, what could be? I mean, there's not enough really there to tell.
Yeah. So really interesting, but this person.
One thing the problem with one thing that I was having when you watch that video is the fact, because look, I'm a handgun owner, and if it's an automatic, well, not semi-automatic, right? I really don't know of too many modern day handguns that aren't semi-automatic.
Bolt
That means
action.
when you shoot them, they automatically eject the shell and chamber another round. You don't have to rack the slide in between all the shots. That's crazy talk. You know what I'm saying? So that action in between the shots is what baffles me the most. And the one thing that does make sense is that B&T, or that B&T 6.9 gun, or whatever that thing was, that actually had a rotating chamber that does not eject the shell. You have to manually eject the shell, and it has a built-in suppressor. So it kind of checks all the boxes on what that looks like, but of course we don't know for sure. Yes, an integrally suppressed pistol. Yes.
And Garden and Guns, we I think I shouted you out on our members only when we were initially talking about this. So I said, I think we'll have to ask Garden and Guns what's up with this, because it's alleged that the gun jammed, but he was very calm and collected and kind of did whatever you have to do to unjam it, or it almost looked bolt action. So it's a very interesting situation, but especially because the NYPD came out immediately saying it was a targeted attack, which you might not expect from the mainstream media right away, right? You expect a bunch of disinformation and confusion, and I'm not saying there isn't that now, but he allegedly fled to Central Park and on an e-bike, and I guess maybe shedded some of his clothes, and somehow got away and is still at large. So very interesting. And like with the Trump assassination, it's not really political. It's just what can we learn about
It's interesting.
experiencing this events in real time, right? That's all it really is, right? Very. I don't know if it was a 9mm, Tiny, but
Yeah, it was.
oh, it wasn't it? Okay.
I was trying to pull a picture up. Hold on. Let me see if I can share my screen of this thing. Hold on.
Sure.
Okay. This is the thing that I was talking about. It's called the B&T Station 69, and it has a magazine-fed rotating. It's almost like a smaller version of like a revolver, but it has a revolving chamber, and the shells are not automatically ejected. So you have to rack it after every shot, and you can catch the shell.
So do you think he maybe caught the shells and then dropped like some decoy shells? Because I believe they said some were recovered at the scene, and with those words. So
It's possible.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know either. You can't really tell from the video very much.
Yeah, very early in the process.
But it's definitely not I don't think it's a gun jamming that bad. I mean, if it is, that's a real piece of shit pistol. Yeah, they call it a bolt action well rod pistol. So it's like a miniature bolt action pistol, and it does not automatically eject the shell. You have to feed it like Lee Harvey Oswald up on the 6th floor. You got to work the bolt. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then after when you work that little bolt, it rechambers another round, but it also kicks the other one out right up top there where you can catch it. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
No, very. And you have to think like, what is going on here? And my initial thought and / guess is that it's some type of, this might sound conspiratorial, corporate hit, right? I don't think it was a deep state thing per se. It might have been an internal beef. I don't know. The guy definitely looked.
Well, it may have been an internal beef
military.
where somebody whose mom they let die from something that they wouldn't cover. I mean that.
Yeah, that's the likely explanation, which is why I don't really. I don't know. It seems a lot to do that, but you never know. It is very possible. Very possible in these days, right?
If you lose somebody that you really, really love and you think you don't have anything else to live for, I mean,
For sure.
crazier things have happened,
Yeah. Yeah. And,
But my screen's not sharing anymore, right?
it is not, sir.
Okay. All right. So let's get into this because I'm sure we're going to be here for a little while, Joe. So let's get right into it. All right. So, like I said, we covered Lawrence Howard and Felipe Vidal Santiago last week. This week it's going to be Loran Hall and Roy Hargraves. And we're going to kick it off with Loran Hall. Now, I'm going to be reading you something here from a summary, a background briefing on Loran Eugene Hall prepared by the Assassination Information Bureau on June 7th, 1977. Okay. So Loran Eugene Hall, a.k.a. Skip, a.k.a. Lorenzo Paseo, was born on January the 4th, 1930 in Kansas. His criminal record includes an arrest for writing bad checks in 56, being jailed in 59 by the Cuban government for, quote, plotting revolutionary activities, an arrest in 61, again in Wichita, this time shoplifting, and an arrest on October 16th, 1963 in Dallas, Texas for possession of dangerous drugs. His Soldier of Fortune days. Hall was a mercenary / soldier of fortune who in the late 50s fought as a captain in Castro's Revolutionary Army. And this is from an article in the New York Times, April 22nd, 1959. Note, Hall served in Castro's army, the 26th of July movement under Camilo Cienfuegos, who later got Hall out of jail in July of 1959 after being in there for 6 months. By 1959, Hall turned against Castro and became involved in a scheme to overthrow Nicaraguan dictator Somoza. This attempted armed expedition was apparently designed to make it appear that Castro was exporting his revolution to other countries and thus provoke Castro's downfall. The plot was ultimately stopped by the Cubans, and many of the principals were jailed, including Loran Hall and John Wilson Hudson. Others involved in this, notable names, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Colonel Gomez, whoever that is, Leslie Norman Bradley, whose name might sound familiar, and 3 other scafoozes who nobody's ever heard of before. So let's get the names.
Well, I know John Hudson was the quote British journalist that I
Yeah,
believe.
I already mentioned him.
No, I know. I'm saying he was doing some reporting. I think it was Argentina, and he ended up in Trescornia, of course,
Yes.
with Loran Hall and Santo Traficante, and the HSCA looked into that a lot. So I just want to add that context, sir.
Thank you. Also in prison at this time was Santos Traficante Jr., and on July 8th, 1959, Castro deported 3 Americans, Traficante, Hall, and Henry Savardra, a former employee of the Capri Hotel in Havana, which was reportedly run by a syndicate, aka Mafia, including Traficante and Charlie the Blade Turin, recently subpoenaed by the Dade County, Florida authorities. Now, recently being 1977 when this report was written, investigating the murder of Johnny Rosselli, which had apparently just taken place back in 76 or 77. So a potential area of importance is the relationship between Loran Hall and Traficante from their deportation in 59 until 1963. In 1961, Hall moved to California, where he set up his personal base of operations for his anti-Castro activities. However, in 62 and 63, he was associated with elements of the no-name Key Group of CIA agents, and anti-Castro guerrillas in southern Florida. Santos Traficante was asked about this group in March before the House Select Committee. It is known that Traficante made contacts with some of the no-name Key Group members and may have funded some of its operations. Twice during the fall of 63, Hall visited Dallas, first to raise funds for the extremist exile organizations, reportedly for Frank Sturgis's International Anti-Communist Brigade. This comes from William Turner, Power on the Right, Berkeley Press, 71, page 106, and a second time with a trailer full of arms for Cuban exiles in Miami. Commission document 1553.9. Lester Logue meeting. Hall acknowledged in a 1968 interview that with Harold Weisberg, that he had been in Lester Logue's Dallas offices on October 17, 63, with an offer of $50,000 was made to shoot President Kennedy. He told Weisberg that he didn't think Logue would have been for it. Later he adds, and anyway, I say this, Lester Logue had nothing to do with it. In brackets, JFK's death. From the Weisberg interview, page 57. In a September the 1st, 1968 National Enquirer article, Hall does not name Logue, but states that, quote, radical right-wingers, including ex-military officers, had made the offer. This is in sharp contrast to Hall's statements on December 29th, 1967 in a Channel 7 11 o'clock news program in Los Angeles when he told a reporter that, quote, liberals had a hand in killing JFK because Kennedy was moving towards the center. In the Enquirer piece, Hall said that he was in Dallas to, quote, discuss funds and pick up supplies for his group, La Sombra, which was formed to host raids from Florida to Cuba, as well as smuggle arms and ammunition to guerrilla groups. On October 16, 1963, Hall was stopped in his car in Dallas, allegedly for having concealed license plate, and was subsequently booked for possession of dangerous drugs, which were uppers found in the glove compartment. Hall maintains that it was a fake charge designed to place on the record his presence in Dallas, which would, of course, later on become just a little important. Because also on October the 16th, 1963, that would be the first day that Lee Harvey Oswald started at the Texas School Book Depository, which is interesting. There have been allegations that Lester Logue put up the $5,000 bond to get Hall out of jail the following day. Now, Joe, money man, how much is $5,000 in 63 money?
Easy math, 50 grand, a little more technically.
That's it?
Yeah, times 10.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, because of increased recent inflation, it could be more, but the easy math is times 10 from 1963 money. It will not be 100% accurate. It will be really close.
Roughly, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So, I mean, that's not really a amount of money to sneeze at, really. 50 grand.
Hey,
that's how much they were going to put up for Kennedy's execution. Also, the same amount that he put up to apparently get Lester Logue out of jail. Now, if we're talking to $50,000 in 63 money, how much is that? Times 10? $500,000? In today's money?
50,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be $500,000 today, yes.
Okay.
And again, that is the quick math, but you could even go to Google and do the calculations yourself, but it is roughly 10 times from 63.
Now, the next part is where Hall kind of comes on everybody's radar, and that's the Sylvia Odio affair, right? Because this was in the Warren Commission report. So Mrs. Sylvia Odio, born in Havana in 1937, was a well-educated member of the Cuban upper crust, Joe. In 1960, she fled Cuba to the U.S. According to the Warren Commission, it appears that both her parents are political prisoners of the Castro regime. Mrs. Odio is a member of the Cuban Revolutionary Junta, or JURE, an anti-Castro organization. It had been reported that in late September of 63, 2 Cubans or Mexicans and 1 American believed to be Lee Harvey Oswald visited the Dallas home of Sylvia Odio. And checking out this story, the FBI interviewed Hall on September 16, 1964. At that time, Hall reportedly told the FBI that he had been accompanied at Mrs. Odio's by Lawrence Howard and William Seymour, who apparently had a resemblance to Oswald. However, 4 days later, on September 20th, Hall retracted his earlier statement after Lawrence Howard threatened to cut off his balls and feed them to him. I made that last part up.
It probably isn't inaccurate, though.
Probably not too far from the truth. But 4 days later, Hall retracted his earlier statement and said that he was accompanied by Seymour and Howard in Dallas on separate occasions and had no specific recollection of ever having visited Mrs. Odio. Subsequently, on October the 1st, Mrs. Odio was interviewed about the incident and shown photographs of Hall, Howard, and Seymour, and she could not identify any of them as having been among the 3 men who visited her home. It is important to note that the FBI transmitted the contents of the September 16th interview with Hall to the Warren Commission after it had already received a retraction from Hall on September the 20th. So despite Hall going back on what he said, the Warren Commission said, we're not using that. We're going to go with his original story. Because if y'all remember, Lee Harvey Oswald was supposed to be on his way to Mexico at this time, so they really couldn't have him showing up at Sylvia Odio's house. So it was perfect for them to, of course, obfuscate who those three people were. It cannot be Lee Harvey Oswald. He cannot be one of the people. So certainly you have three numbnut fall guys, Hall, Howard, and Seymour, who basically take the blame for going to Odio's in the eyes of the Warren Commission, and Lee Harvey Oswald can still be on his way to Mexico. Let's see. Next up is the rifle incident. Now, if you listen to this show and the Dallas Action and Quick Hits before, you've all heard about this rifle incident, which comes from the Watley Report, which is part of Commission Document 1179 from pages 295 and 298. It relates how Loran Hall redeemed a rifle that he had pawned in Los Angeles with a check issued by the American Committee to Free Cuba, referred to as the Committee to Free Cuba in the report. The American Committee to Free Cuba is a Los Angeles group close to the Christian anti-communist crusade of radio preacher and known cohort of General Edwin Walker, one Billy James Hargis, folks. And this comes from Robert Sam Anson's They've Killed the President book, 1975, page 196 to 198. The FBI's response to and reporting of this incident is most peculiar because the Watley Report relates how Dick Watley, an anti-Castro guerrilla trainer, sent Loran Hall and Jerry Hemming to see Richard Hathcock, referred to in this report as Hathcock. In early 63, Watley had known Hathcock for several years. Hathcock was a private detective whose company was the Allied International Detective Agency of Los Angeles. His partner at this firm at this time was Roy Barton Payne. Hall and Hemming, who stated that they were broke, had come to pawn a set of golf clubs and a 30-06 semi-automatic rifle with a Bushnell variable powered scope. Yes.
His middle name was Martin?
Barton.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Barton.
You know, I'm always looking out for that. I apologize, sir.
Hathcock loaned them $50 on each item. Then on September 18th, 1963, Hall returned with a check from the ACFC and retrieved the rifle. Commission document 1179 notes that Hall came in and got a, quote, high-powered rifle which looked identical to the one shown on television on November 23rd, 1963 as being used in the assassination of President Kennedy, end quote. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. Thank you, my friend. You rock.
Thank you, sir.
Throw that up there since Joe's slacking.
Yeah, I have something on the other screen. I'm sorry. Thank you, sir.
Shortly after September 18th, Hemming called Hathcock from Florida. Now, this is despite pawning the rifle 9 months before this. But all of a sudden, as soon as Hall picks up the rifle, Hemming's on the phone to Hathcock and asking about it for some reason. When told Hathcock had given it to Hall, Hemming became pissed. What?
Could he have called him? Could he have called Hemming to let him know?
It says very clearly, Hemming called Hathcock.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. To further document this part of the incident, there exists a Miami Police Intelligence report dated November 1st, 1963, which reports an allegation from Hemming, the subject of this report, that Loran Hall stole two of his rifles from his Miami apartment on October 31st, 1963. In addition, Hemming alleged that recently in California, Hall had also stolen a Johnson 30-06 that Hemming had in hock. In his 1968 interview with Weisberg, Hall referred to the rifle matter. He says, quote, "I do know that Jerry was pissed at me because I took his Johnson with a telescopic sight, that he had threatened to come down and shoot me and all this jazz." The last paragraph of the Whatley report states, "No further investigation was conducted, as it is obvious that the rifle mentioned above was not used in connection with the assassination of President Kennedy." End quote. It is not clear why the FBI suddenly dropped this pawn rifle so quickly after checking it out on November the 23rd, 1963, and reported it to the Warren Commission inadequately and only after a long delay. This, quote, Whatley report is buried in a large commission document full of miscellaneous allegations, and its title, referring to Dick Whatley, has little to do with the actual story of the rifle, which is true. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, there's a lot to be said about all.
Yeah.
Now, I have here a copy of the FBI document. Okay. So this is 2 Special Agent in Charge, Los Angeles, from Special Agent Jerome Crow. Date November 23rd, 1963. Subject assassination of President Kennedy. R.E. memo of Robert H. Matheson Jr. Dated November 23rd, 1963. Richard Hathcock, Allied International Detective, Suite 310, Hollywood Boulevard, Los Angeles, advised Roy Payne is his associate in the above enterprise. Hathcock advised as follows: he, Hathcock, has known one Dick Whatley for several years. Whatley, to the best of Hathcock's info, currently resides in Florida. Whatley is a male white man. Prior to Hathcock's present occupation, he was the proprietor of Adventurer's Corner, a shop at the corner of Sunset and La Brea, which sold articles from all over the world, including a Tarzan outfit from Africa.
I used to live off of La Brea, sir.
The old tar pits.
Yes.
Shortly after the Bay of Pigs invasion in Cuba, Whatley, who Hathcock had not seen for some time, came into the Adventurer's Corner wearing only and gave Hathcock a shoulder patch that had a skull and crossbones on it, plus the words Brigada Internacional, Joe.
Okay. Skull and crossbones, is that
that means pirate shit, apparently.
What's the Yale thing? Skull and Bones?
Yeah.
George Bush?
Yeah.
You know.
Could also mean death from above, you know.
Yes, he also was in Dealey Plaza. One of the Bushes. I am joking, of course.
Easy now. Whatley told Hathcock that he had been in Guatemala instructing troops down there, and that he had pulled out a week or two prior to the Bay of Pigs invasion and blah, blah, blah. So let's get to the good, juicy shit here. Yeah, 1 year ago, Jerry Patrick, true name Jerry Hemming, and Skip Hall, you know, they pawned some golf clubs and this rifle.
The 30-06. Yeah.
Yeah. Hathcock loaned him $100, $50 on each item. And it was his understanding that they were to pick up the articles as soon as possible. Hall apparently never did pick up the golf clubs, and they was there for 9 months before Hall. Hathcock only saw Jerry Pack once after that, and that was approximately 1 week later when he came to his office. Several months ago, since the men did not retrieve the articles, Hathcock sold the golf clubs, and on September 18th, Loran Hall came in with $50 and retrieved the rifle. Shortly thereafter, Hathcock received a telephone call from Hemming, who had been residing in Florida, inquiring as to whether Hathcock still had the rifle. So on the day Hall retrieved the rifle, he sold him a Bolex motion picture camera with telephoto lens, which was then the property of Hathcock. Hall paid by 2 checks. And we talked about this in a previous show that
Yep.
the camera cost him $400 then, $4,000 now. So this was a motion picture Bolex 16 millimeter camera.
Yeah.
It wasn't no piece of shit,
Wasn't a disposable.
family cam type deal. I mean, this was like professional grade. So the question that I've always thought of, Joe, is why are they, the day after the assassination, going to Los Angeles and inquiring at this place about this rifle? Okay. Well, it's apparently because they found some fingerprints on the rifle. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's skip over here because
Yeah, I believe they stopped by on the Saturday, which would have been the 23rd, and inquired about the rifle. And of course, you have to wonder why they would be inquiring about the rifle and inquiring about Payne's fingerprints if they didn't have the rifle in possession.
right.
And I'm not the first person to bring that up, but yeah.
So in 1977, for the House Select Committee on Assassinations, Hathcock was interviewed, right? And this is what he said. Let's see. He told me he had never, or Jerry Patrick told me later that was a damn lie, that he had talked to Hall, and as far as he could find out, that was a lie and about where the rifle was. But he told me he had never recovered the rifle. The rifle was in my office all those weeks. And one of the gentlemen who worked with me in the detective business, Roy Payne, who was a gun expert and gun nut, assembled and disassembled and reassembled that rifle on numerous occasions. And I'm sure Mr. Payne can tell you a great deal more about that rifle than I can. The day after John Kennedy was killed in Dallas, I received a phone call from FBI agent Jerry Crow here in Los Angeles, who asked me if I had an agent working for me named Roy Payne, and I said yes. Jerry wanted to know if he could come by the office and see me and Mr. Payne, and we arranged for that meeting. Now, it's my opinion that the reason he wanted to see Mr. Payne was because Mr. Payne's fingerprints were undoubtedly all over that rifle from his having handled it so many times. It's also my opinion that unless that particular rifle can be found or in some way involved in the whole thing, that the FBI would have no interest in it. My name is Leroy Barton Payne. I have heard and I've listened to Mr. Hathcock make his statement, and I agree with him in every aspect of his statement, and I will, to the best of my recollection, account my experiences with Patrick and Hall. They were here on a speaking and fundraising campaign for going back to Cuba, and as I remember, they were out gathering various types of military accoutrements, weapons, medicines. How they obtained these weapons was not part of the information given to Mr. Hathcock or myself. Loran Hall did tell me that he had his closet in his apartment full of weapons and that he was afraid the FBI was going to come in there and raid the place and take him along, and they were going to have to smuggle them out, and they were getting ready to go back to Cuba. He drew us a map of an inlet on the shore south of Havana and blah, 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 and this, that, and the other. So on November 23rd, 1963, Special Agent Crow interviewed Payne. Now we're going back to 63. He says, Mr. Crow came in, I opened the door for him, and he showed me his ID. He put his bundle down, one of the large manila envelope, took some papers out, and said, I would like to ask some questions about Skip Hall and Roy Payne. And I said, well, I'm Roy Payne, so you can ask me whatever you want to ask. He seemed rather surprised that I was there, and at least that was the impression I got. Now, that right there tells me all I need to know, Joe, about why the FBI was knocking on Hathcock's door the day after the assassination, looking for Roy Payne and Loran Hall, that their fingerprints were all over this rifle, and that the rifle had been found somewhere and been related to the Kennedy assassination somehow.
Right.
Now, we don't know how, we don't know where, we don't know why, because this rifle never did turn up again, apparently.
Yep.
So it's probably, you know, it's probably buried in some FBI warehouse beside the Ark of the Covenant somewhere, you know, in
Yeah. And Hunter
bumfuck
Biden's
Egypt.
laptop. No, that is the only logical conclusion that you can make from that.
Yeah, so when you start to
Or
put
the
two
most
plus two
logical.
plus two plus two together, things start to add up a little bit, Joe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And real quick, just to show everybody what we're talking about here, I'm going to share my screen once again, and we're going to take a look at Mr. Loran Hall. Now, Mr. Loran Hall can go from looking like this, like a very well-to-do businessman. We call this Skip Hall's DB Cooper era. To this, a very disheveled, tattooed, hairy-chested, goatee-wearing, somebody who's not afraid to point a rifle at somebody, right? Now, this is funny, and comes from a Greg Wagner site, tangodown63.com, which I encourage everybody to check out if you have an interest in this kind of thing. So here's Hall's best impression at a pirate, apparently. I don't know what he's doing there. He's got a scabbard and a revolver. More gunplay, right? With Seymour.
Shirtless gunplay.
Yeah, that's William Seymour that has his back to us. That's Hall and Manny Aguilar, his buddy. There's Hall and his tidy whities. Easy, tiny dancer, easy. Don't get too excited now. See, you're starting to get steamed up over there. Hall, Manny Aguilar again.
I missed that.
There's a better shot, tidy whities. Just for you, Tiny. There you go. And his big, giant American eagle tattoo across his back. This is Loran Hall, folks.
Yeah.
Didn't give two flying fucks about nothing or nobody. Clearly not averse to handling rifles. Even possibly sleeping with one. As we can see here, using it as a pillow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's snuggling with it for sure.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up, folks. There he is.
Yeah.
You know? And this is a even later picture, like from the 70s. Bushy headed Loran Hall with a graying mustache. We call those the meth days. Here he is with Hemming. Okay. They did know each other.
Yeah.
There's another picture of him. There's another one from the DB Cooper era, Skip Hall. And there's another one from the 62-63 era. Little pop belly and lots of hair. Lots of hair, Joe. Lots of hair. Chewing his stogie. No cares in the world. Just him and Manny Aguilar. Hanging out. Going boating. Badass, right? And this is in the same picture. This is him talking to Lawrence Howard, who has his back to us. And that was William Seymour on the right. An unidentified, smooth Latin boy standing beside Loran Hall. Possibly Ponce de Leon or whatever his name was.
Yeah, Ponce de Leon. He was a Scafusa, and I think he was, some people said he was responsible for some of the Oswald sightings. Apparently, he had looked like him. I'd heard that. I don't know. But
now, Jack asked an interesting question. If any of these guys had anything to do with the assassination, why would they voluntarily talk to Weisberg? Well, because it would have looked pretty shady if they didn't. Weisberg was not averse to reaching out to anyone. He talked to a lot of these kind of people, also other people.
Yeah.
And back then, if you didn't say anything to journalists or reporters, or you talk to researchers, you were considered a little suspect. And again, I'm sure these guys loved the attention. At least Loran Hall did. Howard, not so much.
No, Hargraves loved it.
Yeah.
We'll get
These
into
guys, some of these guys ate this shit up.
Yeah.
And, to them, it was like they almost knew. Like, I can almost confess to doing something or allude to doing something, but I'm not actually admitted to doing something, and nobody can prove that I did anything. So what's it really matter? At this point,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a serial killer claiming victims that were committed by somebody else, because that somebody else is not going to come right out and say, yeah, I'm the one that did that. But, this guy who wants to brag and boast about it, wants to claim more victims, kind of like the Zodiac or whatever. Some people just do that. I don't know. It's very odd psychology, and quite above my pay grade, Joe.
Yeah. And as we'll get into, Hargraves was trolling Noel Twyman and other people as well, as was Hemming, as was all these people. They were, giving some little threads of truth with mostly bullshit. And it's extremely hard to figure out what they were saying, but you're almost positive that they were messing with you in some way.
Absolutely. So, moving on a little bit. I came across something interesting in 1977, Joe. And this is, of course, right about the same time that, he's talking to the HSCA and all that jazz, which we'll get to, I promise. Apparently, let's see. Loran Hall's wife at the time, and I'm trying to find her name. Here we go.
Mrs. Joanne Hall?
Judith Hall.
Oh, interesting.
He had a couple wives, Joe.
Okay. I have an article I'm going to surprise you with after. Okay, continue, sir.
Yes, Robbie. Glory seekers. Thank you. Perfect analogy. So Mrs. Judith Hall of Long Beach, California.
Hi, Robbie.
Wrote a letter to her senator, the Honorable Alan Cranston. No relation to Brian. Dear Senator, maybe there is. As a registered Democrat that has supported you in the past, I find that I must now call on you for help. I am writing to you on behalf of my husband, Loran E. Hall, who has been having difficulty with several federal governmental agencies recently. First, he applied for his DD-214, a GI eligibility for a home loan through a local mortgage company, but he was subsequently informed that there had been a fire in the record center in St. Louis and that there was no record of his military services. Now what do we do? And this is true. There was a big fire in like the Army personnel records, somewhere in like middle America back in like the late 60s, early 70s, and a lot of people's records were lost. But
yeah, not so.
Secondly, he sent a request to the FAA headquarters in Oklahoma City for a duplicate copy of his pilot's license and was told that they can find no record of that. I really find that hard to believe. If you will have your office contact us, I will be happy to supply you with all the necessary details, and any assistance that you can provide will be sincerely appreciated. Thanking you in advance for your consideration and prompt attention to this matter. Very truly yours, Mrs. Judith Hall. Right? So props to um Senator, because they jumped on it pretty quick. They immediately sent a memorandum to the Department of the Navy, Office of the Department of the Army, Office of the Assistant Secretary for Captain D.E. Nelson, USN, Special Coordination Staff, request for information, blah, blah, blah. Loran Hall, there was apparently the official military personnel records of Mr. Hall were destroyed in a fire at the National Personnel Records Center in 1973. That center has requested from the Veterans Administration regional office in Los Angeles all available records pertaining to him that may be on file there. It is anticipated any information available in that office will be received in the next few days. Upon receipt, it will be in hand, carried to your office. Now, what I find interesting, Joe, is our boy Loran Hall's military service. You ready for this?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Okay. Loran Hall joined the Army. His first day of service, he entered the United States Army on January the 7th, 1947. Joe?
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Good year.
Yep. He was released from the Army 3 months later in April of 47.
Did his mother have a candy jar fall on her head?
No. Let's just say on this report of separation that it doesn't really give a good explanation as to why that's it. There's no reason given unless it's whited out on this. I don't know. But it's interesting. But from June of 48 until September of 52, he was in the U.S. Army Reserves, which basically it wasn't wartime back then. He didn't serve anything. But for his 3-month enlistment in the U.S. Army, 30 years prior, he's worried about using his benefits from his short stint in the Army to be eligible for, home loan and whatever other government assistance that he could get. I find that just a little odd.
Yeah.
So let's zip forward, shall we, to the HSCA?
Sure. I just want to address one thing, if you don't mind. I'm sorry, this is a little tangent. And shout out to Robbie here. And I'm just experimenting on my new powers of being able to share things. But Robbie has done a couple of Jack the Ripper episodes. And do something on Charles Lechmere, the guy that found the first lady and lied about his name. That is a very interesting one. So sorry for that irrelevant tangent, but I want to say hi to Robbie.
Save your tangents for your presentation, sir. Okay. Loran E. Hall, testimony of, accompanied by Bryson Mills, Esquire of Wichita, Kansas. Mr. Hall, please state your name. Loran E. Hall. Would you spell that, please? Loranhall. Would you state your address, please? Rural, there's another word I can't say very well. Rural Route 5, Newton, Kansas. Sir, where were you on November 22nd, 1963? Like, HSC don't even fuck around. Like, this is the first question right out of the gate, bro.
Yeah,
Spell your
and,
name and where were you on November 22nd, 1963?
yeah, and Rob, did he did have immunity during this, correct?
Joe, if you let me get there, I will get
Okay,
there. Sir.
okay. I'm
You're
sorry.
ruining the surprise.
I'm sorry.
God damn. Okay. Hall says, I respectfully decline to answer under my rights of the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution and that it may tend to incriminate me. Okay. That's Hall's answer to where he was on November 22nd, 1963, to which they remind him that he has immunity. Okay. So,
Yes, which means he cannot be prosecuted for his answers.
correct. He cannot incriminate himself. Okay. For anything that he says. He could go in there and say, look, I was behind the grassy knoll fence. I shot that dude. It was me. You got me. He'd stand up and dance right out of that fucking place.
Yeah.
Now, he didn't say that, but he could have.
Right. And also it makes you think, if you do have immunity, you could say those things and kind of be protected if they were true, right? Like kind of covering your ass kind of thing. Like,
now, later on in his HSCA testimony, he did give another answer to the question of where were you on November 22nd, 1963, to which he answered that he was shaving in his apartment. And he immediately called this lady, some random lady, and said, hey, you have to call me back at my house to prove that I'm here. Oh, Mr. Hemming is in the house. What's up, sir? Everybody say hello. We're mentioning your father, sir, in a couple of these things.
yes. Hello, Mr. Philippe.
And so during Hall's testimony to the HSCA, he said a lot of things. A lot of things were later actually disproven, but we'll get there, I promise. Now, they were asking him about money that he'd possibly had been paid by the CIA to him. Okay. And this is his answer. It was not given to me. It was given to another person, and we got part of it. They asked, who's that person? He says, Sam Giancana, who was the mob boss in Chicago. How much money are we talking about here? Hall says, I don't recall whether it was $20,000 or $30,000. Okay. They asked, well, who gave the money to Giancana? Hall says, I don't know. I wasn't there when the money was transferred from whoever to Sam Giancana. And they say, well, are you telling us Giancana said, here is the money I got from the CIA? Here you go. Hall says, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I don't know where the money came from. And they start to ask him, is there any other time? And Hall interrupts him and says, look, I'm trying to answer your questions as truthfully as I can. I don't know where that money came from. Is there any other time that you know you got money or that you think you got money from the CIA? And Hall says, no, not that I know of. It could well be, possibly be, that I received money from the CIA through a second party, but I don't know that to be sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Hall, another con man, not willing to put his butt on the line, but looking for a payday. Quite possible. And we're talking about $250K. All right. So further on in the questioning a little bit, they're asking him about, he says, all right, they had to take a break. Things got hot and heated. And he says, I believe we were discussing your phone call to a representative of the CIA. Again, I want to ask you, what was your purpose in phoning the CIA at that time to discuss the Garrison investigation? So when he was subpoenaed by Garrison and he was in California, apparently, Loran Hall says that he called the CIA to ask him if there's any reason that he shouldn't go there. And apparently he did the same thing with the FBI, his local FBI office. And they're questioning him like, well, how do you know who to call in the CIA? And he says, look, they're in the phone book. I called the number in the phone book, and I asked them, is there any reason I shouldn't go to New Orleans?
Yeah. And Rob, from everything we know about Loran Hall, right? Do you think that he didn't have a contact and that he would have to go to the phone book to call some like random administrative office to say, can I go to Garrison? In my opinion, no. He had a contact. He called and that was that. But that is my opinion.
Random dude sitting at the desk answering the phone.
Yeah. Oh, Loran Hall. We've been expecting your call. Yeah.
He was calling Angleton or anybody like that.
All right.
So then he goes on to tell about, he's starting to talk about the Bay of Pigs training in Guatemala, the Biopoly raid. He says, I'm talking about Rip Robertson. He says he worked for Rip Robertson and was with him on one of the missions. And they asked him, was Robertson known to you to be a CIA agent? And Hall says, yeah, he was. And are you certain about the name Robertson? And he said, well, it could have been Robinson. And, back and forth. They said, no, this guy Robertson was an alcoholic. He probably was over 6 feet, strictly military bearing. He was in his, I would say, late 40s, early 50s. That's about it. Would that be 19? Hall says early 63. So that's interesting that he's going on a mission with Rip Robertson in early 63.
Mm-hmm. And Rip Robertson, I'm sorry, Rob, was, I believe, one of two Americans, to have landed at the Bay of Pigs. I believe the other was Grayston Lynch. And he was notorious for going on missions with his guys.
Yes.
And at our Lancer presentation, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen this, the Rip Robertson alleged photo in Dealey Plaza. So then that would be consistent with his character. So yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, but he goes on and mentions about seeing some letter at Martino's house in Florida and Miami. And he says, Mr. Hall, have you ever been a paid employee of the CIA? And he says, well, to the best of my recollection, no, I was not. He said, I'll put it this way. To my knowledge, I was never given a dime of money by the CIA proper to me, but I have received money from groups and interested people that could have been CIA money. I do not want to get nailed for perjury, so I'm not going to say anything that can get me for perjury, but I have received money, but never knowingly from the CIA. And they asked him, was he ever a contract agent? He says, no. How would you describe your relationship with the CIA during that period? And he said, I had a friend who described it for me, and it was described to me that our job was as a jackal for the CIA. And they go and ask him what that means to him and blah, blah, blah. So hopefully a lot of people here have seen the movie The Jackal or The Day of the Jackal. These are basically paid mercenary assassin type people who do this kind of thing for a living for money. They're contracted or paid under the table or whatever you want to call it, clandestinely. Money wired from here to there type of thing. No trace, no trail. And they do the dirty work and they disappear.
Yeah. Maybe like the United Healthcare assassin. Yes. Not that much different.
Right. So let's see. They're talking about the trips that he made to Dallas in 1963 and who he talked to there. And what I found interesting was that they ask him, has he ever heard of Lee Harvey Oswald at that time? And he said, I was with a fellow named Nico Crespi. He and his family lived in Dallas. I went to pick him up. As I recall, it was on a Sunday, and I went to pick up Nico, and his mother told me him and another fellow had already walked to town. I went up the street, and I seen Nico and this other Cuban, walking down the street, and asked them where they were going, and they stated that they were going downtown because a guy by the name of Oswald was giving a pro-Castro talk, and they were going to go up and raise hell with him. This is in June of 63, when we know Oswald is living and working in New Orleans.
Yep.
At the Riley Coffee Company, allegedly. So, unless there's some guy impersonating Oswald in Dallas in June of 63 doing pro-Castro something, that's a little weird, right?
Yeah, doesn't add up as much.
Then they asked him, they said, well, to the best of your recollection, this was in June of 63? And he said it was somewhere in there. It had to have been after April and before the middle of July, which is an interesting statement because April 11th, 12th, I believe he left Dallas to go to New Orleans after the alleged General Walker shooting. And I believe the middle of July is when he quit or was fired from the Riley Coffee Company. So those dates just don't provide for this person to actually be Oswald in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. They asked him, was he employed in November of 63? And he says, I don't believe I was, sir. They say, what was your source of income at the time during the time of the assassination of President Kennedy? And then they say, or as your answer states, for at least 2 or 3 weeks prior. He said, I would say, I think it was like 10 or 12 days prior to the assassination of Kennedy. And then when I was there, we just flew over because I flew from Miami back to LA. Now, the reason that statement is important is because he allegedly had no job at this time, no money. And money was a very precious commodity to these guys back then. And for him to claim that he hopped on an airplane and flew back to California after driving there makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. To abandon your vehicle. But what flying back from Miami to California does, Joe, is it doesn't put him driving back through New Orleans, through Texas, through Dallas to get to California.
Yeah.
Okay. A little bit before the assassination. So Hall says, did you ever tell anyone that you have 50 witnesses to the effect that you were in a hotel at Dallas at the time of the assassination? He says, Mr. Triplett, I'm trying to establish the fact that I was not in Dallas. I am sure as hell not going to tell somebody that I have 50 witnesses that would put me there. So the answer is no. I clearly did not say that. And then they ask him, well, have you ever made the statement to the effect of there are only 2 of us left, and that's me and Santos Traficante, and as far as I'm concerned, we are both going to stay alive because I'm not going to say shit. Have you ever made a statement to that effect? Triplett. Now we're talking essentially about October 63. Well, then they say, he says, yes, sir, you have the transcript. So, yes, I did say that. Which was referring to the A.J. Weberman phone call interview.
Right. So Hall is saying he did say that?
Yeah. He can't deny that because they had the tape.
Right. And we played it like a month or 2 ago.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's see. So now they're asking about October 63. and they asking about that damn rifle again. So this is what Hall has to say about the Johnson 30-06. Triplett asked him, and then you returned to Dallas and picked up the trailer with the Johnson 30-06 rifle? Hall says yes. And where did you take it from there? Hall says he took it to Miami, Florida, specifically to a Dr. Crockett's house, a dentist. And what was your purpose in taking it to Dr. Crockett's? He said, we stashed all our supplies at a safe house. Triplett says, I see. And do you know how long the rifle remained at Crockett's house? Until sometime in November or December. I'm almost positive Crockett gave the rifle back to Jerry Patrick Hemming either shortly prior to the assassination of Kennedy or shortly thereafter. Now, this is the same rifle that the FBI was asking about in L.A. and looking for Loran Hall and Roy Payne, or Leroy Payne, whatever you want to call him, because obviously their fingerprints have been found on this rifle somewhere, somehow, some way. So they ask him, so you don't know then the exact whereabouts of that rifle on the date of the assassination? And Hall says no. So, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Hemming said that he never got the rifle back. I could be wrong, but I thought I remember reading that somewhere.
Yeah, I believe you are right on that, sir.
Well, the expert is here, so he will correct us if we are wrong.
Sounds good.
It'd be sweet if he did get it back and then like handed it down. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it left. I mean, we don't know where they found that, right? How they got the fingerprints. I doubt. Yeah, they would even.
I mean, it's just funny that you're asking about Roy Payne and Loran Hall, the last two people that put their hands on that rifle.
Yep.
And they knew where to go to ask about it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of questions with the rifle, for sure. Philippe says no. No, I guess he never did get that rifle back. So like I said, it's probably still in some FBI warehouse next to the Ark of the Covenant, collecting dust somewhere.
It's not a bad guess.
Never seen the light of day again.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like to know what you think about this article, Philippe. Just saying, hold on to your hat, sir. And sorry, this is very, very small type, so I'm going to struggle because my eyes are shit. But there was news, Joe, 3 years ago.
Okay.
From the Tampa Bay Times. Byline: a Florida tie to the JFK assassination shows why secret records need releasing. And they go through the whole thing. And this is the story of Jim Pappas. Pappas would go on to become dean of the University of Southern Florida's business school and is retired in Tampa now. But on that day, Pappas was a sophomore at UCLA attending a lecture in anthropology. Someone walked in with a note for the professor, who announced the news of the president's assassination. And Pappas's first reaction was not grief, nor fear, nor disbelief, but instead an urgent question, Joe. And also the title of one of our friend John Lindback's books.
Where was Skip?
Oh, hell. Where's Skip? Now, Jim Pappas is one of Loran Hall's stepsons from his first wife. I believe it's Anne. Skip was the nickname for Loran Hall Sr., who was married to Pappas's mother. A soldier of fortune, Hall was prominent in the Free Cuba paramilitary forces trying to overthrow the government of Fidel Castro. Hall had been circulating in Dallas, trying to raise money for the cause. Some supporters harbored a bitter hatred of Kennedy, blaming him for the failed invasion of the Bay of Pigs and angry that Kennedy abandoned the island to communist rule. Some weeks after Kennedy was murdered, Skip came to Jim's younger brother John Pappas and handed him a rifle. Okay. It was a Mannlicher Carcano rifle. An Italian military carbine made at the same factory as the one that killed the president. When Hall handed over the rifle, he told his stepson to put it away and never to speak of it again. And for 57 years, John Pappas kept that secret. This past spring, however, he started talking with his brother about the rifle, and together they approached me with their suspicions that their mother's husband was part of a plot to murder the president. Over 6 months, I interviewed the Pappas brothers several times. We consulted firearms experts, family records, and old court files. I also reached one of Skip Hall's sons from a previous marriage, and as I edged toward the central question, Larry Hall cut me off. He said, "Where are we going with this?" He demanded. Well, I responded, "Two sons of the woman your father married believe he was involved in the murder of Kennedy." And he says, quote, "I know about all that," Larry Hall answered, "and I'm not saying shit about it." And then he hung up.
Oh.
So that certainly sounds like
Yeah.
something. The apple doesn't fall far from that tree, for sure.
Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah. So for the Pappas brothers, the last remote chance to settle their family mystery could come down to a decision by President Joe Biden later this month. Remember, this was 2021, nearly 6 decades and 10 presidents after the death of JFK. It's up to Biden whether the public gets to see the document or the government's final secret files. And spoiler alert, he didn't let us, in case you missed it. So anyway, they give a little bit of this background and blah, blah, blah about the Kennedy assassination. We know this. But the Pappas brothers were from Kansas, but by the early 60s had made their way to California. So had their mother, Ann, with her new husband, 7 years her junior. The older brother, Jim, was married himself and kept a greater distance, but the younger brother, John, was taken with his mother's new husband and found him charismatic. After serving in the U.S. Army for 3 whole months, Skip went to fight Cuba, or when he went to Cuba to fight in the revolution. First with Castro to overthrow Batista, and then against Castro when he embraced communism. For 3 months in 1959, Skip was in a Cuban prison, along with Tampa mobster Santos Traficante, and after Kennedy was assassinated, Traficante himself was considered a suspect. John Pappas enjoyed Skip's stories and adventures, and John remembers a trip to a gun range in San Gabriel to shoot machine guns in a van stuffed with weapons and ammunition, which sounds like a fun time to me, Joe.
Yeah, for sure.
And then one day, he pulled something out. He told him he had something special for him. He said, "John, take this rifle, put it away. Don't touch it. Don't talk about it. Don't even think about it." And when John asked, "What's this all about?" Skip said, "You'll know." The Carcano was the same make as the rifle Oswald had gotten through the mail from a sporting goods company in Chicago. The rifles are partly regarded as inconsistent and unreliable, and Oswald happened to get one that shot straight, allegedly. It was adapted so it could take a telescopic sight, and so had the one that Skip Hall gave his stepson. Somebody was trying to make a hunting rifle out of this thing, said Al Offinga, a retired federal agent and firearms consultant. At the request of the Tampa Bay Times, he studied various photos of the Pappas rifle. He said that would be the only reason for somebody to add a scope, unless they were going to shoot the president. John Pappas sent the rifle for testing and examination to Lucian Haig, a firearms expert in Arizona. Although it came from the same Italian armory as Oswald's, Haig determined that it was an older version that took slightly larger bullets than the 2 that hit JFK, meaning that this Carcano was a 7.56 .65 millimeter and not a 6.5 millimeter like Oswald's Carcano. But it was the same. It was the right side, the one that Oswald actually ordered, not the one that he got, which is interesting. So Skip insisted that he was home in California in his short shaving when the news broke, and he phoned a neighbor so she could call him back and confirm that he answered the telephone in his apartment. But in the weeks before JFK was shot, Skip had been in Dallas raising money for anti-Castro activities from right-wing groups like the John Birch Society. In those circles, there were hard feelings and loose talk about Kennedy. Secondhand, Skip was later quoted as saying that at one of the meetings he was offered $50,000 to shoot the president. For years after the assassination, Skip remained a subject of great interest for the supermarket tabloids, for Jim Garrison, and for the House Select Committee, which questioned him in secret and gave him immunity for his testimony. Leading up to that interview, the committee sent its chief lawyer to the CIA. And on September the 1st, 1977, Blakey requested all CIA info on a man named Loran Hall. Reads the CIA memo from the time. Blakey stated to me that the committee investigators had some reason to believe that Hall may have had some association with the agency and that Hall was in some, quote, deep trouble. Skip's potential connection to the CIA came up again in 1989 during a federal drug case in Oklahoma. Skip enlisted 3 of his own children and 2 other people to run a crystal meth lab, the government charged. He was also known as Loran Heisenberg.
It sounds like the guy from Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it. But...
Very good, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where you been? When he pleaded guilty, Skip's son, Loran Hall Jr., told the judge, "My father was involved heavily, at least to our understanding, with the CIA as far as aiding the Contras and taking weapons over to them. And he came to me one day and said that he was involved in the running of guns to Nicaragua and that he needed some help. They had oil that was being used to make methamphetamine that was supposedly funding the CIA operations." Of course, the younger Hall continued. "Later, I found out that wasn't exactly the way everything went down," whatever that means. But after the kids were arrested, Skip flew back to the U.S. from Central America and surrendered. In a court filing, Skip said that he put up $17,000 in cash for the drug ingredients and the equipment, but he needed a public defender because he could not afford his own lawyer.
So you're putting up almost $200,000, but you can't hire a lawyer.
Yes.
Just put it in context.
The other defendants, his kids, pleaded guilty and were sentenced in open court. Skip's plea and sentence were done in secret, and the transcripts were sealed in a vault. He faced 20 years in prison. Judging from federal probation records, he served less than a year, and his probation was cut short after 1 more year. 2 years later, Skip Hall died. And then they go on soliloquying about the secret files that are still not released and all this jazz. But it's interesting. You just never know what people are going to find. And we were actually talking to the guy. I think Doug was talking to the guy from the Tampa Bay Times, and I think Mike from Wall Street Window was going to fly us to Oregon so we could go look at this rifle, but it was in the middle of COVID, and it was a gigantic pain in the ass to travel back then, and we never did it. But they did send us pictures of the rifle. We have the serial number off of it and all that stuff. So it's just crazy things. And, when you're thinking about who was on the ground in Dealey Plaza on that day, I got to say this guy, damn sure, is a prime suspect. When you look at the totality of information and scenarios and what he was up to, what he was into, who he knew, it just, and the rifle and this other stuff and then all this other stuff later. It's just crazy to me. So I know that's not the most in-depth on Loran Hall that we've gotten, but there's other shows for that. I just wanted to bring some other newer information about Loran Hall, because there's a lot on this guy that makes him a prime suspect in all this, and that's not everything by a long shot. So, but yeah, I think that's where we are with Skip. So, Joe, if you will, I've yapped like 6 barbers long enough. So let's get into a little Umbrella Man, allegedly.
Sure.
Roy Hargraves.
Sure. I have one thing to share. Hold on. And this was actually from, let me see if I could
Is it
find
a tiny email?
It is not. It's actually a Garden and Guns tweet. Hold on here.
Oh.
Yes. All right.
No, Lee, there is no record of what happened to that rifle. Hall says he gave it back to the dentist, and I believe Hemming tried to get it, and the dentist said, "What are you talking about?" And that was about the end of it.
Yeah, and so I actually bookmarked this tweet from Garden and Guns. Thank you, ma'am, for tweeting about this. I figured it would come into play later. And it's a little article and 2 other pictures on Loran Hall, and talks about his wife. And I guess this is from the Wichita Eagle from July 7th, 1959, which would have been right around the time he was in a Cuban prison. The divorced wife of Loran, Eugene Hall, recently released Cuban prisoner, has decided to press a charge against him on non-support for his 4 children. Miss Joanne Ann Hall, resident of Newton, Kansas, since separating from her husband in 1957, told a reporter Thursday afternoon that she was assured the county attorney she will testify against Hall. She reversed an earlier statement that said she would not prosecute the 29-year-old U.S. Army veteran after John Plummer, Harvard County attorney, blah, 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 something welfare.
I love how you can be considered a U.S. Army veteran and you didn't even get out of boot camp. That kills me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they said. And I think you didn't show this picture, but this was part of her tweet. And it says, Cuba holds Kansan.
Kansian.
Oh, Kansas. Yeah. Obviously, I'm
Kansan.
Yes. I'm not from Kansas, but like Dorothy said, whatever she said, let's go back to Kansas.
Dorothy?
The Wizard of Oz shit. We're not in Kansas anymore. It's a joke. Anyways, it is reported that the American arrested in Cuba, this is really hard to read, as leader of a Nicaraguan revolutionary training camp, which checks out, in the Pines del Rio province of Cuba. Loran Eugene Hall of Wichita, Kansas. I'm not going to read all this, but the next one is a little clearer. It's not that significant. And I think you showed this picture, Rob, didn't you?
Nope.
You did in your.
I didn't.
I thought you did in one of your earlier pictures of Hall.
I did not.
Okay, I'm sorry then. I think this is him without a beard, like younger. And obviously, this is him at 29 of Wichita, is in jail in Cuba, charged with being a leader of a Nicaraguan revolutionary training camp in Pinar del Pios, Cuba. U.S. Embassy in Havana reported that Hall is a veteran of nearly 6 years, which might differ some of what you had said, in the U.S. Army, and is a divorced father of 6 children. So I had never seen these articles before, so I just bookmarked it and wanted to give Garden and Guns her props there. But
Yeah, let's touch real quick on Tiny's email.
sure.
Because I think her analysis is pretty valid. You know, it was last week we were talking about dark complected man and his little sign, raised fist. You know that contact is made, whatever that means. That they had planned out beforehand, and that this whole nonsense of the umbrella was some kind of protest against Churchill or whatever. I don't know what, some bunch of bullshit. But it's a signal. The raised umbrella is a signal, right?
Symbolic.
Well, not necessarily a symbol, but it's easier for somebody who's looking through the rifle of a scope of a rifle to zero in on the area where they're supposed to be taking the shot to find something symbolic, a signal, basically. Like, the umbrella man holding up the umbrella is like, okay, when he gets to here, this is when it goes. This is when we shoot. Boom. When where I'm standing, when he gets to where I'm standing with his umbrella, this is when you shoot. Raise fist, job done. We're good. Everybody get the hell out of here. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But
yeah,
couple that with the fact that when Mark Lane was interviewing Lee Bowers, the man in the tower of the railroad yard behind the grassy knoll fence, he kept saying that there were these vehicles that shouldn't have been back there, kind of making their way like slowly cruising through and stopping at certain points. And he even said that one of them looked like they were holding up a walkie-talkie. And he also commented on the fact that these cars were very, very dirty. Like cars that had been driven across the United States through the deserts, through the swamps, through, then baking in the sun, which is exactly what these guys were doing in their vehicles, which is driving back and forth across the United States, likely never washing them because they don't give a shit, So,
why? Yeah, why?
He said they were dirty up to the windows, like from the from the tires to the roof, like just baked on, caked on dirt, which makes a little sense. But pray continue, Joseph.
Sure. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about Roy Emery Hargraves here. And, of course, he is a soldier of fortune, American adventurer, whatever you say. And I want to give credit here and the next couple slides to friend of the show, Greg Wagner on Tango Down 63, who has a ton of pictures on all the Cuban exiles, all of Interpen, and Roy Hargraves included. This is him on the left, and on the right is a picture of a lot of members of Interpen. In the background, Steve Wilson, Ed Collins, Ponce de Leon, Jerry Patrick.
Larry.
Yes, Fat Larry. That is the Mexican with the goatee, kind of in the dark. Or I guess they're all in dark. I don't know if you can you see my cursor here?
I can see your cursor. I don't
Okay,
know if we can see your cursor.
I'm sure they can then. And in the front is let's see. In the front is Roy Hargraves right here, and Joe Garman. But
Little Joe.
Little Joe, yep. And this is Roy on the left in 1962, and he was he was born in 1940, I believe. Hold on, let me check my document here. Yep, he was born in 1940, so he would have been 22 at the time of this picture. On the left-hand side, in the middle, it's a picture of him somewhere doing some operation, and on the
With a
right,
rifle,
I'm sorry.
with a rifle in hand, like all the other pictures we've showed you of these people we think were operators in Dealey Plaza.
Yes, sir. And on the right, sir, Philippe, with Philippe's father, Gerald Patrick Hemming on the left and Roy on the right. And of course, this is later in life. Has to be 80s or 90s. There was not a timestamp, but maybe Philippe can correct me there, but I'd be shocked if it wasn't 80s or 90s. He died in 2002. But of course, we have talked, and a lot of people have talked about Roy Hargraves being possibly Umbrella Man. And of course, we know he was friends with Felipe Vidal Santiago. He had worked with him. And, the picture in the middle here is, I'm sorry to say, probably the clearest picture of Umbrella Man. And I just want to point you to his hairline, right? This triangle almost, right? This
Yeah,
receding.
it's called a
Yeah,
widow's peak.
Widow's Peak, yes. And the picture on the right, which is from 62, less than a year before the picture in the middle, allegedly, and the picture on the right, which is undated, you could see that similar type of hairline. Now, do I know Roy Hargraves was Umbrella Man? I do not. Do I think he is by far the most logical, plausible option for Umbrella Man? I think so.
I think this photo comparison does not disqualify him from being Umbrella Man, given the widow's peak, given the triangular nose. It's not like Umbrella Man has like a scoop nose or a big Roman nose or
Yeah.
pug nose. I mean, it's perfectly like triangle and
Yeah. No, you're right. It's small. Yeah.
and
No.
pointy chin, which Hargraves does have as well. It doesn't disqualify him.
No, and he was operational with Vidal, and I think that's probably the most important aspect of this whole thing. And like I'm going to show you shortly, he was operational.
And just a reminder, folks, just a reminder, okay? Dark complected man is not the only person that went unidentified in Dealey Plaza for a very long time. In fact, we still don't know who in the hell officially dark complected man is. We have our suspicions about who he is, but no one has ever came out and said publicly that that's them. And neither did the Umbrella Man. He was allegedly found miraculously in the late 70s for the House Select Committee on Assassinations.
Yeah.
But many of the things that he said just didn't make much sense. So this guy, whoever he is, did not come out and say, that's me. He did not hang around in Dealey Plaza to be, swifted away to the local news show to get on there and say, hey, I was 10 feet away. He was never interviewed. This person was never interviewed by the FBI, the Dallas police, nothing. They just disappeared like ghosts that day. which is what operators do. Pray continue.
Yes, sir. And I believe I mentioned this on our members only chat on Wednesday, but over Lancer, I had a chance to spend a lot of time with David Boylan. And David Boylan is co-writing the Oswald puzzle with Larry Hancock. And we're going to plug some of Larry's stuff in a second in regards to Hargraves. But he was saying, and one of the pictures we showed at our Lancer presentation that got kind of that big gasp was the whole people in the Congo 1 year later, right? Posing with the umbrella. And the person that was posing with the umbrella was Rene Garcia, who was one of the pilots for the Bay of Pigs. And he allegedly promised umbrella coverage over the landing force. Of course, that would be the Cuban exiles, right? And I went back to the symbolic quote, like they might have had this umbrella man there to symbolically mock JFK, being like, you promised umbrella coverage, and now on one of your last breaths, you're gonna, see an umbrella. You know what I mean? So that is what David Boylan told me. He is one of the most, he's one of the smartest people in terms of Cuban exiles and operators. I mean, no one knows as much as he does. He is a treasure for sure. And
again, in that picture in the Congo with the guy holding the umbrella is Rip Robertson. Noted
he is in that picture.
Yes.
Yes, he is in that picture for sure. And and that's kind of what we get back to here when we talk about Vidal and Hargraves. I mean, these were all people that were part of the same faction, right? And they might have had different incentives personally, but they it's definitely one of the most intriguing factions you can kind of think of in terms of who was working together to possibly eliminate JFK. So let me move on here. Roy Hargraves, and this is a document, an FBI document from March of 1963, and he had planned a raid into Cuba. And the Bureau, this is really hard to read. The Bureau realizes that only some type of informant, redacted. Bureau informant in this matter has knowledge of Hargraves' account of the expedition. Nevertheless, interviews with him and with Rolando Masferrer, who allegedly supplied money and weapons, would be desirable. Since I think it's Clean Alvarez, who, like Hargraves, was connected with Interpen, was captured by Cuban authorities. It is felt that members of Interpen, including Hargraves, Hemming, and others, could have been interviewed without jeopardizing Bureau informant. So they were trying to figure out if their informant here has been compromised, is my read on this.
Yeah. Howard K. Davis? Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. And let's see, one more.
Good old MMT one.
Yeah, there are a lot of them. Memorandum Wanal to Sullivan, 3563, advised that Cubans captured 8 counter-revolutionaries and repossessed 2 fishing vessels, which his group had allegedly seized. I'm sorry, did you say something?
Me? No.
Okay. Information.
I was going to add real quick, Joe.
Sure.
Of course, this is March of 63.
Yeah.
And Hargraves, Howard, and a bunch of these other independent guys were just arrested in early December 1962 for violation of the Neutrality Act for getting ready to pull a raid, unauthorized raid. So that didn't
Bro,
sound much.
That's my next slide, bro.
Oh, okay.
Come on. I'm just playing with you because you just did the same thing to me.
Oh.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we do this we do a lot of improv on the show. And Hargraves and 2 others reportedly returned to Miami prior to the capture of the 8 counter-revolutionaries. Gerald Patrick Hemming, head of Interpen and soldier of fortune, undoubtedly known of this matter and is close with the Miami attorney, blah, blah, blah. But yes, the group violated the Neutrality Act. And I'm going to actually skip this here. So let's see how many times Roy Hargraves got into trouble. And he got in trouble a lot here. And actually, hold
on. Excuse me.
It's okay, sir. So when he was in the military, he went AWOL in 1957.
He's got a little bit of a rap sheet there, it looks like.
Bro, I struggle to get on it one slide. And he was from Arizona, or his wife was in Arizona, Maricopa County, which has some interesting relevance with some of the election shit these days, right? It's like that county that has all the drama. And that's in 19... I'm sorry?
I said, thank you, Scott. Baby video game controller sits in a diaper under the word noob. Thank you for the super sticker, my friend.
Thank you, Scott. Nice to see you here. I hung out with Scott a lot during the Lancer conference, and super nice guy. Was there for... I mean, I showed up at like 9 a.m. one morning, and here he is already showed up there, ready to go. And great guy. I enjoyed his company a lot. So
you ain't lying, James. I tried to hit the damn belch button, but it didn't work.
What's the belch button? You lost
me. Just turning my mic off and coughing or belching.
I see. Okay. So you see throughout 57 and 58, he's arrested for grand theft twice, burglary, vagrancy 3+ times, shoplifting, and I think, as you mentioned, Rob, on December 4th, 62, violation of the Neutrality Act, Firearms Act in June 63. I mean, bro, this rap sheet is ridiculous. And he's 23 at the time of the JFK assassination.
Yeah, and he's already got a rap sheet this long.
Bro, it's out of control. So when you think of people that would do this type of operation in Dealey Plaza, you have to consider what they've done in the past. So
absolutely.
Yeah. And my PowerPoint is all fucked up here, but on December 4th, this is like a bunch of his descriptions of every time he was arrested. But the relevant part, December 4th, 62, Hargraves and 12 other American inventors or soldiers of fortune were arrested by the United States Border Patrol for violation of the Neutrality Act. The group had amassed a quantity of arms and ammunition and a boat and were preparing to leave on a raid against Cuba. And yeah, this did not stop here. Let me see. When Rob, I'm sure you're familiar of the pilot Alexander Rourke.
Yes.
Yes, the CIA pilot who went disappeared on a mission in September 1963
Yep.
in Central America. Uh, well, Hargraves and four other adventurers, including Hemming,
Mm-hmm.
went to Central America to try to search for Rourke, and they were unsuccessful in their attempt there.
Down, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a whole other crazy story that maybe we'll do on, on another episode. But it's a lot to get into. From November 63 through March 64, Hargraves was closely associated with and worked for Felipe Vidal Santiago, a Cuban revolutionist in Miami. Hargraves helped Vidal to obtain arms, ammunition, and a boat. He transported the boat and military equipment between Miami and the Florida Keys. When Hargraves was stopped by the U.S. Customs agents, Vidal clandestinely left the United States and infiltrated Cuba. Vidal, as we covered last episode, was captured and shortly after executed by her firing squad in Cuba in April 1964. MMT2 explained that the United National Front Against Castro is unknown in the Miami area and is probably a paper organization created by Hargraves to raise money, essentially, to collect funds, medicine, and materials for later sale to Cuban exiles in Miami. So let's see there. We'll skip this one. We just talked about this. Sorry. Okay, so we have established that Roy Hargraves was operational starting in 1961 through 1964, but he was and there's not many documents, Rob, around the time of the assassination on Hargraves. I mean, there are a few, but nothing that we would be looking for. So, in 1968, which is about 5 years after the assassination, what is Roy Hargraves doing? Well,
Operation Chaos.
yeah, he's getting into trouble. And when we talk about the type of people, and I'm bringing it back to this, that would have participated in the JFK assassination plot, you have to think of people that were operational, that don't give a F, that are risking their lives. And as I'm going to show you here, Roy Hargraves continued to do that. And this is, I believe, when he's 28 years old. This is a little snippet from an article. Roy Hargraves, who in September 63 trained for an invasion of Cuba on No Name Key under the direction of this Central Intelligence Agency, disbanded until Kennedy disbanded the training camp, in quotations, has admitted to the bombing of the Office of the Students for a Democratic Society in Long Beach, California. When arrested, Hargraves told police, "I did it. I did it alone." Doesn't give a crap.
And
Hargraves.
Anybody else up? Because I doubt he did it alone.
Yeah, no, he's taking the blame, and he probably knows he's going to get off, and coincidentally, he did. Hargraves was originally charged with felony of taking explosives near a public place, which you would think would obviously be a felony. The district attorney, however, later reduced the charges to misdemeanor of malicious mischief. The DA gave no explanation as to why charges were reduced.
It wasn't dynamite, Joe. It was just some firecrackers. Just some,
Yeah.
or the CIA called the district attorney of Los Angeles and said, "Look,
Yeah.
you better turn this guy loose ASAP."
Yeah. And that's similar with Loran Hall, right? With the meth thing, right? Because he shouldn't have gotten out of that like he did,
Right.
but he did. And
And if he's doing that shit in the 80s, like you said, for the Sandinistas and Army Nicaraguans and all this stuff, all this, Oliver North crap that was going on back in the 80s, it doesn't surprise me one bit.
yeah, it's a pattern, man. And it's the same people that have had connections for decades, honestly. On the right side, October 22nd, 68th, Lieutenant Roy Henry, Intelligence Detail, Long Beach, California, advised a representative of the FBI that they have received information from a confidential source that Roy Emery Hargraves, prior to instant bombing, has been seen with dynamite and caps in his possession. Shocker. Based on this information, Long Beach police arrested Hargraves, a white male, 28 years of age, in 1968, at his residence in Long Beach, California, for outstanding traffic warrants. I think we could see the ridiculousness in that, right? Here this guy is going and putting bombs everywhere, and he's arrested for traffic warrants.
Yeah. It's almost like getting pulled over for a concealed license plate.
Yeah, that's a big issue in New York right now, actually. Hargraves originally denied any knowledge of the bombing, but thereafter furnished a statement acknowledging he was responsible for this bombing. And of course, that lines up with the article to the left of the document I'm reading on the right. Hargraves will be formally charged with this bombing by the Long Beach authorities on October 23rd, 68, blah, blah, blah. Bro, you can't make this up with Hargraves. I mean, it's fascinating to have kind of gone down the rabbit hole of his documents here. But here we go in later 68. LI 19, which is a code for some type of informant, stated that Hargraves, who admitted an arrest for gun smuggling in Miami, Florida in 65, claimed he was working for the Central Intelligence Agency in Florida. So this is someone that is a contact, right? Like, sorry, my mind just went blank. Informant telling them, that Hargraves is saying that he worked with the Central Intelligence Agency in Florida in the 60s. LIT9 said that Hargraves was interrogated by representatives of the Federal Bureau of Investigation while under arrest. Blah, blah, blah. Is currently in jail, although he did not stay in jail long. So that is 1968, Rob. But in 1970, do you think Hargraves changed up his act?
No.
He did not. You are correct. And this topic is Roy Emery Hargraves, Gerald Patrick Hemming, Internal Security Cuba. It is noted that Roy Hargraves, an American adventurer and mercenary, in July 1970 advised he was involved in a plan to effect warfare between the United States and Cuba. The plan consisted of I don't know if it's anticipation, to have something deflecting Cuban military personnel fire missiles against the United States Navy base, Guantanamo, Cuba, thus projecting the United States into a military takeover of Cuba. So, what this is saying here is Roy Hargraves in 1970 is trying to create a false flag at the U.S. Navy base in Guantanamo Bay to try to get the United States to invade
Yeah,
Cuba.
he wanted to fire a missile into Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah. Oh, it was from some people that were defecting that were going to fire the missile. It's really confusing, but essentially, I mean, he gets locked up in '68 for bombing people in California, and here he is, less than 2 years after, trying to plan a major false flag
Yeah, into the 70s.
in Cuba. Yeah, I mean, and this is the type of guy, if you look at it objectively, that would be crazy enough to participate in a raid against Cuba, or an assassination against JFK. I'm sorry. Um, so you mentioned Operation Chaos, right, Rob?
Yes.
Yeah, and that was a CIA domestic espionage project targeting American citizens from 67 to 74, established by LBJ and expanded under President Nixon, whose mission was to uncover possible foreign influence on domestic race, anti war, and other protest movements. And remember, Hargraves tried to bomb the Black Panthers and the students of Democratic whatever, right?
Society.
Yes. Thank you, sir. The operation was launched under DCI Helms and Chief of Counterintelligence Angleton and headed by Richard Ober. CIA was charged with collection, correlation, and evaluation of intelligence. Executive order, COINTELPRO. We talked about that a little bit on the members only, Rob. I don't want to go too deep into this. HT Lingual, which was the program involved with examining correspondence, specifically the mail. So, how is Hargraves involved in this? If you know what I mean, he's not some throw around mercenary soldier of fortune here, you know?
Well, he kind of is if the CIA is paying him to do this shit.
Well, I said not throw around, right? I'm saying he was a valued asset in a ton of different
But
things.
also knew that he was a loose cannon with loose lips and a very dangerous guy, but that he could do stuff. He got the job done.
Yep.
And these are the kind of people that they look to do these things. I mean, the CIA is not supposed to operate on domestic soil, but they can pay people to do things on domestic soil that can't be traced back to the CIA, at least immediately or on paper. So these are the kind of people that they use. You can never tie them back to the CIA.
Right. Always one degree of separation, right?
Yeah. Even though Hargraves might have known exactly where his funding was coming from and where his orders were coming from, as the informant was saying, he admitted to working for the CIA. Well, if Hargraves was well aware of where his money was coming from and who he was doing things for, that doesn't mean he was in any kind of official capacity. You know what I mean? Cutout.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And just catching up on some of the comments. Yes, James, Chaos was in tandem with Co-Intel Pro for sure. And
Yeah, we got a lot into COINTELPRO on the members only show.
Yep.
We talked about Lawrence Howard and the Brown Berets and Operation Chaos, and
Yeah.
as I think we'll see, I took a little snippet from the Hargraves interview with Noel Twyman where he was talking about Lawrence Howard and when he was working with the brand. There's a certain amount of time or period of time that Larry Howard will not talk about, and that is from conveniently after the assassination in '63 until about April of '64 after Vidal is killed. So,
yeah.
I'm sure Joe has a little something from that interview because.
Yep, I do, and that is a great segue here. So, and I even have a surprise for you, Rob.
I love
surprises. Yeah, I know you do. So, we are going to briefly touch upon, even though we are over 2 hours already, on the interview with Noel Twyman and Roy Hargraves and Jerry Patrick Hemming's brother, R. Hemming. I believe his name is Robert. Don't quote me on it. I didn't figure that out. But I did email Larry Hancock today because this whole 39 pages of interviews with Twyman was included in his first edition, Appendix A, of Someone Would Have Talked, and had to be discluded, not included. Is discluded a word?
Disincluded.
Disincluded from from future versions of the book, and I was not sure why, Rob. So what did I do? I went to the source. I went to the source and I asked. I said, why were you not allowed to print this in later editions?
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure Twyman was dead by the time Larry's book came out. So I'm wondering the answer.
Yeah, and I think Twyman, for whatever reason, was like whatever issue he had with his wife. Like his wife was pissed at him for doing all this JFK research. I know you and me, Rob, can can understand that.
We can empathize.
Yes, yeah. And so I asked him, and let me just plug in my fucking laptop here, and I'll be right back.
That's my non-existent ring finger there, folks. Let's see. Thank you, Perpetual Concepts. Much obliged. Sylvia Odio, Beneath the Mistletoe. Oh, there's a lovely visual. She was quite a lovely lady. Yeah, Joe, that would be bad if your laptop died right in the middle of this, right before we get to the juicy bits.
No, we should be good.
He normally waits till it's 4% and then all of a sudden disappears.
Well, it's at 19 right now.
Well, at least you caught it.
Yeah. But just do another comment or two before I figure this out.
Howard K. Davis was in Dallas to personally watch the fireworks. I don't know about that. NK. I would have to look at that document again. I don't think it was our MMT1 Howard K. Davis. I can't remember exactly. It'd be real interesting if it was, because there's that picture of allegedly Rip Robertson in Dealey Plaza, which is interesting. And if Howard K. Davis was in Dallas, that would be real interesting, considering he's the rat. He's the dirty rat of this group of mercenaries.
Yeah, and I do think that is Rip Robertson, 100%. I mean, just look at the nose.
Oh, I know.
As someone that has a big nose, I can relate. So
You sniffed it out, Joe.
yes, that's a good one.
Hey,
So.
I got jokes.
Oh, all right. I'm ready here. All right. So there is a 39-page interview, as we had briefly described, with Noel Twyman, Roy Hargraves, and Jerry Patrick Hemming's brother. That was later
Who's possibly acting as Roy Hargraves' attorney at the time.
Yeah, it definitely sounded like it for sure.
Yeah.
He was like clearing things up for sure. So I asked Larry about this today, and I said, if you can't tell me why, I understand. But he said, no. Here's a quick answer to your question. Noel Twyman was contacted by Hargraves and Hemming's brother, who had concerns over the interview being public. And he contacted me, Larry Hancock, and asked that I remove it from the next edition of the book.
Wait, say that again?
Noel Twyman was contacted by Hargraves and Hemming's brother. They had concerns over this 39-page interview being public and contacted Larry Hancock and asked him to remove it from the next edition from his book. It was in the appendix of Someone Would Have Talked, the first one.
So Noel Twyman asked him to remove it.
Hargraves and Hemming's brother asked to remove it, but
so Hargraves and his attorney, Hemming's brother, asked him to remove it. Okay.
Yeah, and we have some more here. And Larry continues, and thank you, Larry, for providing this context, because I asked him, I told him like I'd read a couple pages from this and just asked him for the context, and he very nicely got back to me very quickly and gave me a quick answer on this. So, Larry is a treasure. I don't think anyone would doubt that. So he continues, Larry, years later, I talked personally to Hemming's brother. That would be R. Hemming in the transcript we are going to read shortly. And his version was that Hargraves was still legally actionable for some charges in LA at the time and didn't want his name showing up anywhere. So,
well, anything other than murder or treason, I think, does have a statute of limitations, which would likely have dropped off in the 30 years since LA. So,
well, I don't think murder ever drops off, Rob.
well, that's what I just said, Joe.
Everything
okay. Except murder and treason has a statute of limitations.
Yeah, so it's probably like a lawyer's recommendation to be like, don't put this in future editions, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And let me continue here. Not sure I believe that. Love Larry. But Noel Twyman said if they could get on the phone with Jerry during breaks and apparently brief him and ask him for advice. Jerry's brother told me that Hemming consciously told a variety of stories, some true, most false, to ensure that no one who was on the inside would get uncomfortable. In other words, Jerry Patrick Hemming shot his own credibility as a type of self protection. Boom. Essentially, like, he was all over the place, Hemming, that like no one could have ever taken him
We
out.
know that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just confirmed from someone who was probably contacted legally in terms of the appendix. And that's one of the reasons why he did stay alive. And we did show a picture of Hemming and Hargraves in their
Later years,
50s, 60s, yeah.
in their golden years.
In their gold. Is that golden years? 50s? For soldiers of fortune, probably that would be golden years.
And as far as I know, William Seymour is still alive. I saw a photo of him in a nursing home in Florida.
Really?
Doing some crafts, yes.
Wow. So I think I sent you the link, and it is online, Rob. I don't know if you put in the show notes, but there's 39 pages of the Noel Twyman interview with Hargraves. I'm going to share a couple random points here. And this is going to be jumping around a lot because we have a little bit of time. But Hargraves, this is where Vidal is going along with the program saying we were driven to Dallas. Noel Twyman, oh, but he wasn't driven to Dallas. Hemming's brother, maybe he was driven to Dallas earlier. He went to Dallas several times, which of course we covered last episode, Rob, with the
Colonel Bishop thing, yeah.
Yeah, and the visit to Walker's house. And Hargraves says, okay. And that puts Vidal and I and two others at Walker's house, at the time, at about the time that Walker was shot. This is like my mind blown face, or before, laughs.
Still laughing.
Yeah. So, yeah. So what everyone has to understand about this interview with Twyman is that Hargraves and Hemming is fucking with Twyman. I mean, he is trolling him. He is laughing. He knows he's never going to get prosecuted for any of this stuff. And he is straight up trolling and laughing in everyone's face. And this is a consistent through his whole interview here.
I don't know it in the sense that you mean trolling, as in just straight up bullshitting him.
I think it's both. I think there's some trolling. I think there's some bullshitting.
But no truth?
Oh, no. There's a significant amount of truth.
That's what I mean. When you say trolling, it seems like they were just telling stories and bullshitting.
No, I mean, trolling is in like laughing and like making fun of like, you're never going to catch us, or we're going to laugh at this and make fun of you. And you have to remember, these guys risk their lives for decades. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to care about some interview with some guy decades later. They know they're not going to get caught.
Right.
Yeah. And so they're trolling. So that's what I meant by that. I'm sorry, sir. Is it possible you and he, and I think he's talking Fidel, were down there just as a coincidence at the assassination? Hargraves, no. Noel Twyman, you don't think so? Hargraves, absolutely not. No way. That's ludicrous. Let's see. Hemming's brother says, not with their background. That was the reason why they were there. They were Oswald's, in plural. They were found dead with guns clutched in their hands if they had to be. I think this is one of Noel Twyman's like co-authors, Scholdel. I get kind of confused a little bit here. When you went to Dallas, did you know Kennedy was going to be in Dallas at the time when you were going there? Hemming says, which is interesting. No. Hargraves, hell no. Hemming, they were following Kennedy. You didn't know. I'm sorry?
They weren't following Kennedy.
They weren't following Kennedy. I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. You didn't know he was going to be down there. Hemming. They didn't have time to read the newspaper. When you're operating, you ain't got time to do anything but operate. That's the truth. Hargraves. It was announced, in fact, the last we heard, he was going to Chicago. The last information I heard anyway. Hemming's brother, even though they published it in the newspaper a month before, as far as they knew, it was a surprise. Hargraves and Philippe Vidal Santiago never said anything about any changes. So as far as I knew, Philippe was under the impression that Kennedy was going to be in Chicago. Hemming's brother, he went to Miami. They found out the Miami thing, which I think they're talking about the
bombing.
Yeah, and the exile there. I know you know his name, but that was the possible Patsy going forward.
Humberto Lopez.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Manny Garcia Gonzalez. I don't know.
Then Bolden came out from Chicago. They canceled Chicago, and the next choice was Dallas or LA, and they sent him to Dallas. So anybody who had been following him would have not known that he was in Dallas without having inside information. Unless you lived in Dallas and that morning in the paper said Kennedy was going to be there. And we're going to get into Loran Hall in a second. So this interview jumps around a lot, and it's like 39 pages. I took a few screenshots, but just to for some continuation purposes on your Loran Hall segment, Noel Twyman asked Loran Hall and Ed, maybe Edward Collins, probably. Yes, they're being controlled by Castro agents, and they're being sent to burn a source of money. Jerry Patrick Hemming goes to the front door of Lester Logue's place and goes out to the back door, and a fucking FBI agent shows up with unintelligible, all right. You booked Mr. Logue. Why? Did you see who just left? So Jerry said for years that he had told the story going out to the back door, and he'd see feds going in the front door right after him. Noel Twyman. So Loran Hall was a Fed, or was he a Castro agent? Interesting question. Hemming's brother, and I don't think they had a great relationship at this point, Hall and Hemming. He wouldn't know that.
I don't think they ever did.
Yeah, they were always like drama, right? So take this with a grain of salt. He wouldn't know that he was working for Fidel. Bernice, a.k.a. Bernardo de Torres, had been working for Fidel and didn't know it. He knows now. After a while, you sit down and start thinking about some of the jobs you've done. You start realizing who you've been working for. If everybody you killed was an anti-Castro agent, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we were trying to figure out, coming up here, is Noel Twyman. just when Oswald got co-opted into being a patsy. At what point? As I was saying, in fact, if you're talking about Roy Hargraves and Vidal Santiago, Roy could have been in Dallas, been involved in the Walker incident, been involved with Oswald, been involved in even getting him his rifle. Not that you were, but you could have. And it could have been innocent. That doesn't mean you're involved in the Kennedy assassination. I mean, he's playing it really safe here, Twyman. Of course, because Hargraves is right in front of him, right? You're not going to say, Hargraves, you killed the president, right? And Hargraves says, how come one of the worst pieces of shit weapons going, the Mannlicher Carcano, how come so many of them are turning up at the same time? Question mark. How come they're brought by one agent in New Orleans? What, 4 of them? They're also in your papers. He gets 4 of them. How come a couple of more of them turn up? It's all of a sudden out of nowhere the chief weapon of choice, a halfway decent weapon. The setup, it was very cheap to get a hold of. If you needed to do some troops on a budget thing, but why go for the Carcano? That's the only thing I'd ever.
And gee, Joe, who came up with another Carcano a couple weeks after the assassination to give to his son to hide and put away and say, forget about this thing?
Was it Hall?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was a trick question. Yeah. No. And of course that's it was nicknamed the was it the peace?
Yeah, but it's just further corroboration that these shitty rifles that were a dime a dozen, that these guys, they weren't driving across the country collecting these weapons, that nobody was giving up their Johnson 30-06s sniper rifles to these guys. They were giving them some piece of shit surplus crap to take and arm these anti-Castro Cubans with. I mean, Klein sold them. And you know who applied to work at Klein's? Gerald Patrick Hemming.
Really?
Yeah, he put that, I think it was on a CIA application. You can't make this stuff up. And then all of a sudden Hall has a Mannlicher Carcano rifle. I mean, come on.
Yeah, no, that definitely is corroboration for sure.
Think about something, Joe. If you're going to set up a patsy with a Mannlicher Carcano shit rifle, then you would think that at least a couple of the other people actually shooting would be using the same rifle. Because whether it's fired out of a 7.65 or 6.5 millimeter, unless you have the casing, you're never going to know, because the bullet's going to be mashed all to hell. And you might be able to figure out it was a Carcano bullet due to its, makeup, but you can never distinguish it from a 7.65 or a 6.5 millimeter. We're talking, it's literally like 1 millimeter difference on the bullet size.
Huh. Thank you for that.
So that'd be, the smart thing to do if you're setting up a patsy that's supposed to be using a Mannlicher Carcano, is to actually shoot with a better Mannlicher Carcano.
Right.
Or the one that Oswald actually ordered. He ordered a 7.35 or 7.65 Carcano, and he didn't get the one that he ordered. So if that's the one they thought he was going to have, then it does make sense that Hall would have that rifle if they were shooting using that rifle in Dealey Plaza. And that's not to say that that's the only thing that might have been shot in Dealey Plaza. But
of course.
Go ahead.
Yep. And Noel Twyman says that's always been a mystery. Why a $3 rifle? Hargraves, yeah, for $1 million tag. That means like $1 million hit. Like, why use a $3 rifle for $1 million?
Because that's what the patsy would order. Okay, the patsy's not going to order, some $100 rifle.
Yeah.
Because this guy's supposed to be poor, has shitty job, no money. What can he afford? A shitty rifle.
Yeah. And I've always thought that there's something to do with the peacekeeper rifle, the Carcano, right? Like, JFK obviously didn't want war, right? Was trying to stop war and nuclear war. So would it be ironic if he was shot down with the peacekeeper rifle, right? I don't know. I always thought that that was interesting. It would be symbolic and ironic, I guess.
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not a thing. So a couple other things I'm going to randomly jump to here. Noel Twyman. We didn't get finished with that John Martino story. The good-looking guy on the couch, Rob. Was he on the couch? Further research has to be made here, but yeah. You have another reference of Jared Patrick Hemming. I'm sorry?
I say nothing.
Yes, me either. But it could have been on the couch, says Noel Twyman. So whether he was on the couch or in the living room, we do not know, but hopefully we will find out. That is, of course, Vidal. A little thing on the bottom that I want to include, Noel Twyman asks Hargraves, how did you learn how to make bombs? Because, of course, Hargraves was an electronics demolitions expert. I'm sorry. Did you go to bomb school or did you learn from someone else? No, I learned from a master. Interesting. What's that? I learned from a master. So Hargraves isn't giving anything away here. Now they're talking about Oswald and Dirty Dick, Rob. Dirty Dick comes in. Yes, of course. Always he comes in. Who fed Dick Russell the information? Hemming's brother said. Noel Twyman says, but is it their job? ? That Philippe was in Dallas at the time he did talk to. Hargraves interrupts. Yes, but how many people knew that? Hemming's brother, Roy, and maybe one other person. Noel Twyman, Jerry knew it. He told Dick Russell. And Bishop, of course, that is William Bishop, that we had covered a little bit on the last episode. I know Tiny sent us an email about that. And then quotations, everyone talks at once, aka chaos. Unintelligible. Hargraves, people we actually met in Dallas at that time, that particular trip. Those were the only people that we knew. Hemming's brother. So if Escalante, that is Fabian Escalante, head of the G2, Cuban intelligence service, knew that, he either knew it from torturing Felipe Vidal Santiago when he was arrested on his 1964 mission, or because he knew one of the people that they met was a Castro agent. That's how they operate. Hargraves says Escalante had it from his own men and had it confirmed through the torture. And of course, it is alleged that Felipe Vidal Santiago was tortured in the hours before his death, shortly after he was caught in the raid in Cuba. So let's just. So Twyman says, you say that you're speculating Philippe, aka Walkie-Talkie Man, aka Dark Complected Man. Are you speculating, or do you, Hargraves, kind of deflects. That is not for me to say. Noel Twyman, if this is Philippe, then he was hardly innocent when he was there. If he was doing something like this, he was hardly doing it there just to be set up. Hargraves, he was doing a part of something. He didn't know what it was. Twyman, he didn't know what it was, question mark. Hargraves, no. Hemming's brother comments, he was told to be there and do this. Roy Hargraves, he went ahead and did his job because by that time you were either doing your job when you see what it actually is, you're oh shit because you know who's behind, ready to whack you out. You know who's behind that fence with the Secret Service ID. Laughs. Again, this is Hargraves trolling Twyman saying, you don't know who's behind that picket fence, right, with a Secret Service ID. And Roy Hargraves was known to have fake Secret Service credentials. So,
but of course, he couldn't be behind the fence and be Umbrella Man at the same time. So he's not talking about himself.
That is true. That is true. Although, I don't know. His laughing is a lot for me. I don't know if he like gave it to someone or he's just trolling and confusing people.
I'm sure he's heard things because people said that they ran into a Secret Service agent up at the knoll.
Yeah, and in this document, he mentions Robert Grodin. He mentions Oliver Stone. So to your point there, he is very aware of the current mainstream JFK narratives. He's not, he's not ignorant to that.
Well, fun fact, Hemming and I think Hargraves or Howard actually are in the movie JFK.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think it was Hemming who was
they play a shooter in the
on the second floor. Yeah. So, and I think Howard and Hargraves were some type of like
consultants.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Yes, and of
course, make this shit up.
That is the ultimate irony. I mean,
that is the ultimate FU. That's the ultimate troll job.
I mean, these guys must have had such a laugh after that.
The actual assassins be in the movie and
directing it and consulting it. It's out of control. So
yes, Jack, that was pre-internet, so it was perfect time for them to do that and troll the hell out of everybody. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, and they were older at that point, right? They didn't think there was any risk of being prosecuted at that point.
But Stone put a lot of these people in the movie, like Leighton Martins. He was in the movie as like an FBI agent. He put Hemming in the movie as an assassin. I mean, it's crazy, and the movie's full of that stuff. If you really go looking for it, I think it's amazing.
It is, and we've covered a couple other people in Nolans that were that got some cameos. I think would be the right term for that.
Yeah.
Right, and just the irony is of course ironic. So let me just finish up this here because we are, oh my God, are we 3 hours in almost? Shit.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is just going to automatically shut down at 3 hours in. I don't know.
All right, I'm done soon. So I think this is Twyman's like co-author. So do you think there's a decoy shooter in Oswald's window, unintelligible? The real shooter's at the opposite end, but he isn't good. He hits. That is what Conley took all of his shots from. Hargraves and this other discussion is unintelligible. You know what? Hargraves says, I've never believed that they wanted this low nut thing to begin with. This came up afterwards. because they then had to decide, how the hell are we going to cover this up? Everyone talks at once. Hargraves. So there is a table full of men saying, how do we cover this up? And that Snake Spectre, Arlen Spectre, tells them how they can do it with this bullet. Of course, he's talking about the magic bullet. Noel Twyman, they discovered when they looked at the Zapruder film, there had to be so many shots and they needed a shell. So the Snake Spectre, Hargraves says, tells them how this could have been. We could make them all, we can make them take this. It's acceptable. It buys us time, blah, blah, blah. And Hargraves says again, you know what? I've never believed that they wanted this lone nut thing to begin with. And you know what? I'll agree with him, because I think the goal was to get them to invade Cuba. They didn't want to go to the lone nut thing. I think that was decided.
They wanted to make it look like pro-Castro supporters shot the president.
Yeah. And I think Larry, in his book, when he mentioned at the end of our interview with him, said that Oswald's expectation was to be flown out to Cuba that night. So that kind of lines up with this, and we will wait for part 2 of his Oswald Puzzle interview with us when it comes out. And let's see if I have any more. I do not. So, I sent you the link, Rob. Hopefully it is, or we'll put it in the description where everyone can read that 39-page.
Or just go to tangodown63.com. And
and go to documents. And if you click on Cuban exiles, even though Hargraves wasn't a Cuban technically, it's one of the 2 documents under Hargraves, and it's very interesting. Shout out to Tango Down 63. They have a ton of Cuban exile information, Mr. Wagner, and a fascinating read. So I encourage everyone who is interested in this to read that transcript, as I only covered a couple snippets of it. But wow. I mean, when we talk about the type of people that could be involved in this, Rob, I mean, we see a pattern here. We do. From last week to this, people that have worked together, people that have been operational, people that don't give a hell about living or dying. Like, they are operational. They are risking their lives.
They're a tight-knit unit. It doesn't take 20 guys to pull this operation off.
No.
You got 2 guys, boots on the ground, and you got at least 2 guys behind the fence, and possibly somewhere else, maybe one other location. I mean, when you put all this stuff together and you lay it out, like hopefully we have for you, and explain to you why we think that these guys were involved on the ground. Hopefully it allows you to put some of these puzzle pieces together. Like, you can look at these guys individually, but you can also figure that a couple of these guys came up with a plan because they couldn't do the government. The Attorney General, Robert Kennedy, was going after these guys for violating the Neutrality Act when the CIA was trying to get them to do these things, right?
Yeah.
To do their dirty work for them. And then RFK put handcuffs on them. And that pissed them off too. Not only did the Bay of Pigs piss them off, but the Neutrality Act pissed them off.
Yeah.
And these guys were in the right position to know big funding people who would be more than willing to pay for this operation to happen. Although ideologically, these guys were already in 100%, whether they're getting paid or not, because this is just what they do. the government wouldn't allow them to go do what they wanted to do to Cuba and Castro. So they figured they'd turn the operations inward, like we've always heard before. And it doesn't take a gigantic CIA tangled web of super spies to figure all this out, or to sponsor it, or to direct it, or to order it. It just takes a couple of disgruntled mercenary soldiers of fortune that figure that they would rather do this kind of shit than be at home with their families and get a real job and settle down and act like a real husband and not have 10 stepkids and real kids and 4 wives or no wives or whatever the case may be. You know,
Yeah.
this was more important to them than family.
Yeah.
And that tells you everything you need to know. For them to go jobless and live this life, choose this kind of hard life where you're basically driving across the country begging for money from people.
Imprisoned in Cuba.
Yes. Going to prison for your beliefs. Thank you, Paula. Thank you. You're the best. You're the best.
Paula is the best. I can attest.
You guys are on fire. Thank you, Bungle. We try. These are questions that we always get asked. So, because we do this show on a variety of topics, and it's very entertaining and interesting to dive into some of the lesser known aspects of the Kennedy assassination, the little dark corners where the cobwebs lie and the dead cockroaches are. But to actually lay it out for you of who we think was in Dealey Plaza pulling off this operation, and to lay that out in a manner that is understandable and comprehensible, and why we think that, using logic, using documents, using pictures, using profiles, using testimony, using interviews, using documents. This is the best case scenario that we have at the moment. Of course, things can change.
Yeah.
Things can always change. And we're not saying that these were the only 4 prime suspects that were in Dealey Plaza. Okay. It's just that these are the ones that we have the best evidence for, that we can really actually likely put in Dealey Plaza in November on the 22nd in 1963. That just happens to be when JFK was killed. And that's a lot. It's very hard to do. Very hard to do.
Yeah.
You run into things like Michael Mertz, being in Dallas and then being kicked out of Dallas the next day, which is very interesting too. Or somebody using his name, whether it was Renee Sutra or whatever. Those things are interesting, and there could be a more complicated cover story or plot to this whole thing than we even know about. Various other patsies, maybe this guy makes sense, or somebody screwed up and now this guy has to do something. It's just, whoever planned this was very, very good, because they got away with it. Okay. And they got away with it for a very long time. So,
Yep. And the people we described were in that lifestyle. They were risking their lives on a weekly, monthly basis, as we have proven in the past 2 episodes. So, we're not saying these are 100% the people, but they are, at our stage in our research, the most likely. Right?
Yeah. Because these guys knew that it was going to be a big operation, that it would be important to plan if you're going to get away with this. It's one thing to do this as a suicide operation, knowing you're going to get caught, but to actually do it with the intention of getting away, that's a whole different level of planning. And it worked. So
Yeah.
this is the kind of
And it wasn't their first operation. It was not their first operation.
whoever did this, it was not kindergarten for these guys. You know, these guys have graduated college. You know, they know what's up, and you know they had a lot of great minds around them to feed off of, and you know,
Intelligence.
major generals to bounce ideas off of. So you know, it's not out of the realm of possibility. There's other people involved, whether it be to help plan this thing, help fund this thing. You know, there's just so many things to take into consideration here, and so hopefully you guys enjoyed the show, and we're coming up on 3. And like I said, I don't know if, and we thanks, man. We got 53 people in here still, Joe. 3 hours in, we're doing pretty damn good.
Thank you, everyone, for hanging out.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us again and going through this again. And we'll be back with you next Wednesday for a preview of episode number 321. So without further ado, Joe, let's do our workaround for Dino. Sing us out this bitch.
We got Dino.
We got Dino.
Oh.
Not dancing Dino, but we got Dino. Dance monkey. Again, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We had a blast. You guys rock. You guys make the show. Thank you for all the comments.
The greatest lies are told in the name of truth.
Thanks for hanging with us.
The greatest crimes are committed in the name of justice. The quotation is Jim Garrison's. It could be used for him or against him in this strange case. Good night.
Rudy. Rudy. Deuces.
Peace, guys. Have a great